kids, my name is Miss Nancy and you're here at Grow with Miss Nancy. And I'm so glad you're here this Sunday. Remember, we're studying the book of Acts and we're now in chapter 2. And in chapter 2, the Jews are there in Jerusalem and they're celebrating Pentecost. Now you might say, well, what is Pentecost? Penta refers to the number 50 and it refers to 50 days. Well, where's the history behind that? Do you remember in the Bible when Moses led the Hebrew children, the Jewish people, out of slavery in Egypt and they were going to the Promised Land? And 50 days after they left Egypt and they went through the Red Sea. Remember how God parted the Red Sea and they went through, and then the Pharaoh's army came behind them and the waters came over them and drowned them all. So now the Jewish people are in the desert and they are looking for the Promised Land. Well, it turns out 50 days after they left Egypt, God realized, these people grew up being slaves. They don't know how to be free people. They don't have laws, they don't have rules, they don't have any guidelines for their lives. So God decided He was going to give them the 10 Commandments. Now, you might not have heard this part about the story of the 10 Commandments, but it turns out that God told Moses, I want you to get the people ready because I'm going to come down from heaven onto the mountain and I am going to visit the people and give them the 10 Commandments. Well, they had to get all washed and clean and they had 3 days to get ready. And when God came down out of heaven, there was thunder, there was lightning, the mountain shook, and there was smoke everywhere and clouds everywhere. And that roaring sound of God coming down like fire onto the mountain scared the people. It really scared them. That was Pentecost, when the 10 Commandments were given. Well, now here we are. Jesus has died. He's rose into heaven. The disciples are all waiting and waiting and waiting in Jerusalem. And they were told by Jesus, wait until you receive the Holy Spirit. So it was on the day of Pentecost, 50 days after Passover, that the people then were praying together and all the believers were there. And there was suddenly a wild, roaring, loud sound of wind coming and making all kinds of noise. And even tongues of fire came on everybody's head. And they started speaking in different languages. And it was loud. And they were praising God and saying all the wondrous things that God had done. Well, that was a lot of noise. And there were other Jewish people in Jerusalem who were not believers yet, but they had come to celebrate Pentecost in Jerusalem because it was a holiday for the Jewish people. So there were people from all over, different places, speaking different languages, but they heard this really big noise and they came running to see what in the world is going on. And when they got to the place where all these disciples were, and they heard that noise, and they heard the people praising God in their own language. And they knew these people didn't know their language. They did not recognize them as from their region, but they were speaking their language and praising God. And it was so amazing. It was just something to see. Can you imagine how that could have been? It was really, you just can't even explain what it was like for those people. But Mary and Martha were there. Let's hear out what they had to say about it, okay? See you next Sunday.